Hey everyone, Vincenzo Calla here, and welcome to episode 18 of Let's Discuss Politics. Today, I'm glad to be joined by the Mayor of Ottawa, Jim Watson. Jim was first elected as a councillor in 1991, and he was re-elected in 1994. 3 years later, he was elected as the youngest mayor in Ottawa's history with 82% of the popular vote, serving until 2000. In 2003, he was elected as the MPP for Ottawa West Nepean and immediately appointed to cabinet as Minister of Consumer and Business Services. In 2005, he was appointed as Ontario's first Minister of Health Promotion, and he successfully implemented the Smoke-Free Ontario Act. Re-elected as MPP in 2007, he was promoted to Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing. Following his time in provincial politics, Jim Watson returned to the municipal politics, was elected as the Mayor of City of Ottawa in October 2010, where he has been re-elected 2 times. Jim is now in the last few months before the election where he will not be running again. Thank you, Jim, so much for your time, and thanks for joining me today.
Thank you very much, Vincenzo. It's a pleasure to be on your podcast.
It's great to have you here, and we're going to start off with our first segment called Jim's Story, where we'll talk about your political history. So the first question is, when did you first get involved in politics?
I guess in any kind of a formal or organized sense, it was when I was in residence at Carleton. I spent 3 years in residence, and in my first year, I ran to become floor rep on my floor on First Russell, and I was acclaimed, so I didn't have an election. Then the next year, I ran for president of the Rideau River Residents Association, and was fortunate enough to win that election. And that was the first time I saw my name on a ballot, so that was pretty neat. And then when I graduated, my intention was to be a journalist. Maybe a newspaper columnist or reporter. But unfortunately, there weren't a lot of journalism jobs available when I graduated. So I ended up getting a job on the Hill, working for an MP, then the Speaker of the House, and then a minister. And I really got consumed by politics working up on Parliament Hill, that's for sure.
Well, I mean, it's amazing to think of. I mean, I've had so many people on this show, and we've always talked about, it's always the same question. So we all talk about the journeys that bring people into politics. And it's so interesting to see how you got into it. I mean, you're sitting as the Mayor of Ottawa, serving 1 million people. You have for many years now, and you started off just by running in your residence and running for a community association. And it's so important to know that, I mean, especially municipal politics, you're in the grassroots a lot and you're in the community, and looking back to those times where you serve the smaller and then the bigger communities are just so important.
Well, there's a lot of similarities too. You know, there was a famous speaker of the House of Representatives in Washington, Speaker Tip O'Neill. And he had a very famous line where he said, all politics is local. And when you think about that, it really does make sense, you know, because when people are coming to you as a politician, it's usually as a first resort because they have no idea where to turn to get help, or a last resort because they've hit a brick wall or they can't get through a bunch of red tape. So you see people in you know, coming to visit their councillors or mayors or MPPs or members of parliament, really to seek help and to seek some guidance, whether it's a lost passport or the street hasn't been plowed or there's lineups in the emergency ward. You know, people contact their elected representatives as they should.
And I've had so many conversations about that here, and we're fortunate in Canada to have that great system on all levels of government. So we're going to go into the second question, which is, I mean, you've had a long political history now. You've run in different levels in different ways, but I wanted to ask you, why did you decide to run for position you hold? So why did you decide to run for mayor the first time and again in 2010?
Yeah, I got elected as mayor, or rather as a councillor in Capital Ward in 1991, well before you were born. And I got involved because up until a couple of years before then, I just been renting as a tenant an apartment. But I decided to buy a house, and I bought a house in Old Ottawa South. And I started all of a sudden receiving tax bills, as you do when you're a property owner. And I thought, wow, I'm paying a lot in taxes for a pretty small semi-detached house in Old Ottawa South. And I started following municipal politics in the city section of the Citizen much more closely than I did before, because when I was working on the Hill, my focus was national politics. And as a result, I really didn't spend a lot of time looking at local politics. But I discovered there was lots of spending going on. I wasn't happy with some of the decisions that the council had taken, and I decided to run for council and was successful in defeating an incumbent, and then ran again in '94 and won that election. And then I decided I was either going to move up to run for mayor or move out, because I didn't want to be a lifer, sitting around the council table as a councillor for 30 years or something like that. So I ran, and I was fortunate enough to win, and then decided not to run in the next election because I really wanted to see the city amalgamate, which it did. The province brought forward an amalgamation and took 10 cities into one and got rid of the regional government, which I supported. And at that point, I was appointed by the Prime Minister to be the head of the Canadian Tourism Commission, which is a great opportunity to promote Canada.
Well, really interesting. And I mean, especially looking at, like what you said, getting involved in sort of looking at those issues, like the taxes that you're paying, and sort of paying closer attention to municipal politics, because municipal politics is very accessible to residents. It's much smaller than, say, the federal government or the provincial government, and it deals with a lot of the everyday aspects of our life, whether that's in the winter snow plowing or garbage pickup or parks or any of those sorts of things. It's really important to pay attention to that. So,
well, sorry, just to interrupt.
yeah.
So you brought up a really good point, because one of the things I like doing, people ask me what's one of the best things about being mayor, and one of them is to go into schools to talk to students. And I get invited to all sorts, from grade 2 to grade 12 classes. And the ones that I enjoy, I enjoy them all, but I enjoy a little bit more grade 5, because that's when they're starting to study government in elementary school. And when I talk to the students, it can be a bit boring talking about city government, but I said, think about this, ladies and gentlemen, when you wake up in the morning, you flick your lights on. That's Hydro Ottawa. It's run by the city. Then you turn the tap on to brush your teeth. That's a city service. The water. You flush the toilet. The sewage system is a city service. You walk on a plowed sidewalk that was plowed by a city plow. You hop on the bus or the train. That's a city service. You come back home. You may stop for a skating lesson at a rec center or a swimming lesson at a municipal pool. Then you head back to your home, and then you start all over. You turn the water on to boil, your pasta, and then you go to flush the toilet. That's a city service. Then you close the lights off at night. That's a city service. So in essence, you've had about 20 or 25 touch points with the city, but you never think about it, because the services, by and large, are really well delivered, and they're very seamless.
And the city services are those that sort of make our lives efficient, right? And those are a lot of the services. But I'm going to continue on to the next part, which is serving as elected official, where we talk about your experiences and achievements as an elected official. So the first question I'd like to ask, and you already touched on this, but maybe to expand on it, what is your favorite part about serving your community or serving Ottawa as their mayor, as an elected official?
I guess the great opportunity I have to visit different parts of the city that, perhaps if I wasn't the mayor, I wouldn't get a chance to go and visit. These wonderful rural villages we have, Manotick, Cumberland, Navan, Fitzroy Harbor, Metcalfe, Osgood. The list goes on and on of these wonderful small rural communities. I was at the Navan Fair just a few days ago, and there's 4 more rural fairs that come up over the course of the next month or so. And people take pride in their community, whether they're working on a farm or they have a small vineyard or they're working in a small bakery in Cumberland Township. So that is one aspect that I really enjoy. And the second is, I mentioned, going to visit schools. And I guess the third is an opportunity to honor people. We have a key to the city, which is our highest honor, and we've honored a number of people over the years. Everyone, Michael Jean, the former Governor General, and Patrick Chan and Sandra Oh from television, and just the other day we had, or coming up rather, we have James Duthie from TSN, Brooke Henderson. We gave the key to the city a few weeks ago. And then every meeting we have a City Builder Award, where we're honoring people not as well known, but that do great volunteer work in their community. And it's a little opportunity for us to say thank you to that individual and promote the fact that this person's doing some incredible work, whether it's bringing patients for cancer treatments or coaching the softball team or organizing a fundraiser for the food bank.
Well, for sure. And being able to honor those people who make differences in the everyday lives of of people of Ottawa and people of the greater Canadian and world community as well. Just must be so great. And I'm not going to continue on that because the next one is a big one. And I'm sure something you're thinking a lot of nowadays as you're approaching the end of your term. And it's, what is your favorite achievement as an elected official? Like, what has been a couple of your favorite achievements, if you want to point some
Yeah,
out?
I'm glad you allowed me a couple because it's hard to just say one. I think when I was a minister and brought in the Smoke-Free Ontario Act, that was an act that was instigated here in Ottawa, where there's a woman named Heather Crow. She was a waitress at many restaurants, including the Newport restaurant in Westboro, and never smoked a day in her life, but worked in a restaurant business that had this blue haze smoke all the time. And it was a bit silly. You'd have a no smoking section here, and then you'd have a smoking section right next to it and nothing dividing it. So you're breathing in this terrible combination of tobacco and so on and chemicals. And she passed away, but she fought very hard to get legislation in every province. And I was fortunate enough when the Premier asked me to shepherd the Smoke-Free Ontario Act, and it passed, which I was quite proud of. I also, worked with a couple other councillors, Joan O'Neill and Peter Hume, to help save the Aberdeen Pavilion, along with a lot of heritage activists, because that building was ready to be torn down literally within a month. And we got elected as rookie councillors, Peter and I, and we put together a plan and luckily saved that. And that was really the first of a number of revitalizations, which I was honored to be involved with, to revitalize Lansdowne a few years ago, where we put in new south side stands, and we got shops and restaurants and green space and trees. It's really quite a great success story. And I guess other things, the Innovation Center, that talked for 20 years about building an innovation center. We have one now at Bayview, creation of Invest Ottawa. The Ottawa Art Gallery has been a huge success down by the Rideau Center. The LRT, no question, we had the first year, lots of challenges and problems, but working much better now, and it will continue to be even better when it goes farther north, south, or rather south, east, and west with phase 2, which is under construction now. So the south end of that will open next year, and then the east end will open the year after, and then the west end after that. So it's done in stages, and I think when the system is working, it is really a great system. We just got to make it more consistent in terms of the challenges, and we're working on that almost night and day to get it done.
Definitely. And I mean, next year, I was fortunate that my high school is pretty close to, or the high school I just graduated from was really close to where I live. So I was able to drive in every morning because it was about 5 minutes. But now I'm going downtown for university, and I'm going to have to take those transit systems more often. And it's, again, those thinking about the city services that serve us every day, and those efficiencies such as the LRT and the other transit systems in our city that help everyday people, thousands of people commute to and from work, school, and so much more.
I think, from the university point of view, when phase 2 gets fully operational, if you're going to Ottawa U and you're taking your class at Carleton, you can connect. Or if you're going to Algonquin and you want to go to Ottawa U, you can connect. And even La Cité's trades building is out on Trim Road, so part of their campus will be connected. So all 4 post-secondary institutions will have better access to each of the stations. And I think, I look, for instance, I was at home the other day and I decided I want to go to Saint Laurent. So I got, took the bus to Tunney's, and then took Tunney's to Saint Laurent, and I was there like in 10 minutes. Did some shopping, hopped back on, got back home, and it allows you more mobility and more freedom to move around and maybe live in a less expensive part of the city if you're going to university, for instance, because there'll be train service, within 5 kilometers for, I think, about 75% of the population.
Definitely. And we're going to go into the last segment now, which is called Politics Are All Around Us, where we do talk about the politics and around us. So the first question is, who is or who was another politician that inspires you?
Well, I've a number of them, but one in particular was John Fraser. John Fraser, not the MPP, although John Fraser is a good friend and he's inspiring, but the Speaker of the House of Commons that I worked for, who was an MP from Vancouver. And he was a great environmentalist and a great believer in the institution of Parliament. And I learned a lot from him and about his passion and compassion for others. And he's still alive. He was the first elected speaker. Prior to his election, the prime minister would just appoint someone. So, he's been a role model for me for some time.
Well, definitely too. It's important that even though you are a politician, have been for quite a while now, it's important for politicians and even for everybody to look up to people that inspire them, whether that be somebody in politics or people that have inspired you in your life. It's just so important for that. And we're going to go into the last question, which is especially going forward, what is an issue that you think needs to be focused on more in politics, or maybe even in municipal politics?
Good question again. I think probably the element of loneliness with senior citizens. Theresa May, when she was British Prime Minister a little while ago, created a ministry of loneliness. And I think some people probably smirked at that and laughed, but I think we saw with COVID-19, there was a lot of senior isolation that's taking place. That, they couldn't go to the mall, for instance. I live near Carlingwood Mall, and often seniors would gather there to have a cup of coffee and maybe a Tim Hortons muffin, and sit in the common area. But when that was all wrapped in bubble wrap and you could go in, get your groceries and then leave. I think a lot of people who are seniors, particularly those who lived on their own, who may have mobility problems, probably suffered, loneliness bouts and mental health challenges. And I wish we'd done more to try to reach out to those individuals. I think we did some good work, but I'm concerned about the longer term repercussions for these individuals who felt very much abandoned and left to their own devices because they didn't, for instance, have family members in the community to go and look in on them.
Well, for sure. And I mean, but prior to the pandemic, even up to a couple of weeks before the outbreak of the pandemic, I volunteered at one of our city long-term care homes in Barrhaven, and I used to go in and help with the recreation and the residents. Some of that would be some of the biggest communications and activities that they did in a week, and thinking about them throughout the whole pandemic, thinking about what they suffered through and not being able to do those things just saddened me. And it's great that those things are starting to come back now, and now to continue on with that and start thinking about that. So that is all for today. Thank you, Jim, so much for joining me. If you like today's interview, make sure to go check out my other interview with today's guest on Instagram for top 10. If you're watching this at the premiere, it will come out on Friday. To stay updated, make sure to follow me on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, BC Productions 25. Check out my website, VincenzoCalla.com. Make sure to like, subscribe, and just to get notifications here on YouTube. Let's Discuss Politics is a VCalla production. So until the next video, I'm Vincenzo Calla, signing out.